Winter is tough on car batteries, but even in summer. Yesterday it was 15 degrees Celsius, and still I measured a deep voltage dip down to 8 volts on the car battery. That our new car battery undergoes, even with an already warm engine. What if you could start your car confidently, even with an older battery? That might stretch its lifetime twofold, and you know how expensive it is to replace a battery, between 100 and 400 euros. Now let's see what I did yesterday with 6 not too expensive super capacitors, 53 euros, and how a magic screen lets you look deep into the physics. Hi Norbert here, I'm energy engineer, and in this video number 89 I'll show you how to start a car better with super capacitors. This method provides extra confidence in cold weather and extends your car battery's lifespan. Compare a replacement of 250 euros with 53 euros for the super capacitors, plus still another 7 euros for the LEDs and the diodes and a few other components. Okay, you have to build it and that costs time, but therefore you are looking to this video, at least I hope. But consider also the extra security that you may have in your car when you have to go to work in the morning or find yourself really alone in nature. Thank you for the incredible response to video number 86. I received 41,000 views, and that's 40 times more than I can expect for my small channel with 5,500 subscribers. Your comments and your engagements mean a lot. I really feel committed to present you today something meaningful. Why watch this video until the end? You'll see a real experiment using super capacitors in a car with in-depth analysis. At the time of writing this, I still need to install these super capacitors in my car. Video production is multitasking. I must finalize the script one day before the uploading, while still performing last-minute experiments. So these experiments are at the end of the video, or even in the next video. Indeed, I had some setbacks and have to postpone something. I'll show also the time graph of the current and the voltage on the battery using an oscilloscope. It's amazing how you can see happen things very deep in the engine just by looking to this screen. I can confirm for now that the concept of balancing the supercapacitors with each LED plus a normal or Schottky diode seems a working and simple method, which drains even 4 times less than the other standby consumers in your car. The most compelling reason to follow this video is the situation around us. We must drive the energy transition from the bottom up. Yes, that includes you. Find here on the channel innovation that's not in the shops. And if you find value, please hit the subscribe button with notifications. Together we can innovate and make new energy solutions part of our home. The world's decision makers are very busy with their own agendas, but we, as households, we consume 1/3 of total primary energy worldwide. And when we respond to incentives for heat pumps and electric vehicles, they tell us that the grid is not able to keep pace with the demand growth. It's clear that we normal folks must emancipate quite a lot. The energy transition must start with us, and I'm glad to help you. If you like that, please help me grow. Share this with your friends and parents. The so-called energy poverty is nearly 10% in an area like the European Union and still rising. I can imagine that you know some parents or friends that have really problems to pay the bill. I'm sure that following this channel can help you and them to pick up something that can help them save money, contribute to a healthier planet, and also to have more security of supply, of energy supply in your home. Let's dive into the details. I received many comments about my capacitor bank, especially regarding voltage balancing across the 6 Super capacitors. Most comments were correct. And one oversight that I made was forgetting to adjust for the series connection of 6 capacitors. And you were right. If you connect them together, the 6 capacitors of 500 farad together in total make 83 farad. And I am sorry for that. I knew it, but I forgot to put it in the calculation. Still, this capacitor bank is enough for its job, as you will see later. After all, this device was sold for this application for car starting. And then technology isn't black and white. Batteries and supercapacitors, they work together, not separately. There's no such thing as the correct size of a capacitor bank. With any size, the battery still handles part of the load, but less or far less than before. If you live in a cold climate or have a stop-and-go engine, doubling the capacitor bank will further ease the battery strain. But think of Pareto's rule. 80% of the results can be obtained with 20% of the effort or the investment. And as a rule of thumb, if you want to go until 100%, so still 20% further, then you need 80% of extra effort or investment. You will see in the experiment later that even with this prototype that's not reinforced for the strong current, and I have here iron wire, not copper, and they are very thin for these 500 amperes. They will never flow through this thin wire, but already it contributes to the very hard job of braking an engine. And I saw on the oscilloscope nearly 1 volt less voltage drop on the battery. There are many ways to balance capacitors. All roads lead to Rome, as they said in Italy already 2000 years ago. While I acknowledge the alternative methods proposed in the comments, I want to complete this approach first, with the LEDs and the diodes. I will be happy to try also other methods in other videos, if there's interest. My simple combination of LEDs and the normal or Schottky diodes has worked well, also in the tests of yesterday. My capacitor bank repeatedly charged 10 ampere with this power supply and then discharged on this loose starting motor without car. That's a kind electricity workshop for cars, and that's in Italian called Elettrauto, in Montecatini Terme in Tuscany in Italy, and they gave it to me. I did this reliably again and again, and with several times checking the individual capacitor voltages. In addition, I measured a minimal self-consumption of only 20 milliamperes, and that's about 1/3 of a medium 60 ampere hours battery after 1000 hours, and that's 6 weeks of parking. Older cars draw 20 to 50 milliamperes, and modern non-electric cars even 50 to 150 milliamperes during standby, because they have more electronics. In addition, it's very simple to disconnect the capacitor bank if you park it for a long time. After all, it's you that connect this capacitor bank to your car with DIY, so you know the way under the hood. Some comments also suggested to use lithium-based technology that is optimized for very high currents. Well, my response is that batteries have their fixed voltage range, while capacitors just follow the battery's voltage if they are connected in parallel. I think that if you have 2 batteries with low internal resistance, then it is like having 2 gladiators in a carriage. In IT terms, information technology, there must be one master and the rest must be slaves. I want this video to be just as valuable as video 86, which had so many views. This video includes an experiment with the loose cranking motor, the courtesy of Ronnie. It was my first time that I had a cranking motor, so I took my precautions before connecting it to a 100 ampere hour battery. Touching wrong cars with such a battery will really create an inferno, because there's so much more energy in such a battery than in even an ultra capacitor. Instead, I tested this old cranking motor multiple times with a capacitor bank, which then I discharged and then I recharged. And always I measured the same voltage individually and all the lamps were at the same brightness. Charging also with a rather high current, 10 ampere. Okay, not so high as the alternator. On the screen of the oscilloscope, you see the motor running for about 10 seconds with real-time current display. Later I used this oscilloscope on our RAV4 2.5 liter diesel. The oscilloscope is the star of this video. I rarely used one during my whole career of electrotechnical engineer. What a missed opportunity. This tool reveals the invisible world of moving electrons. In this video I wanted to show, in order of time, a high current spike from the supercapacitor to the cranking motor to start the engine. And that is like a bank that provides a lot of capital when you buy a house. And then after that, the current flowing back from the battery to the capacitor. This is like the homeowner that pays back the mortgage. And then after that, the alternator that recharges both the battery and the capacitor. You can compare this with the employer that pays the salary to the employee, to the homeowner, which then automatically pays back the mortgage. And by measuring the area below the time current graph, known as function integration in mathematics, we determine the supercapacitor's contribution to cranking the engine, measured in ampere hours, ampere seconds, or coulombs, as you like it. Another way to support me beyond sharing my video and subscribing is to purchase technology that I put in the description and that I show in the video. You find the links in the description. You then don't pay the small percentage that I earn. The cost for you is exactly the same as for another that buys directly the product. I use this scope often for grid voltage appliances. Take care if you do the same. Voltage scaling and protection. High voltages don't fit always in the oscilloscope's scale, and they are also dangerous. So I bought an additional 100-to-1 probe that reduces 230 volt AC to 2.3 volts for safe measurement. For a budget-friendly option, I built a voltage divider myself in a small plastic box. However, it's not so simple as it sounds. Like they say in Italy, non è mica facile di fare un buon caffè. If you follow ChatGPT's advice, and that's a voltage divider with resistors of 1 mega ohm and 10 kilo ohms, that's indeed 100 to 1, you'll get a lot of noise on the graph. Reducing those resistors by a factor of 10 cleans up the signal. But the grade of the resistors of 100 kilo ohm might become a little bit hot. A safer approach, if you don't have this 100 kilo ohm bigger resistor, that you take just 3 resistors of 33 kilo ohm and put them in series. Grounding issues. Oscilloscope grounding can conflict with the devices which you are measuring. Since my oscilloscope runs on 5 volt USB power, the safest method is by just using a portable power bank for your smartphone, because it has no connection with the ground. Even a small 5000 mAh power bank, as here, can provide several hours of operation, while a 20,000 mAh power bank can last much longer and will also power your smartphone and tablet. Check my video description for an affordable best-selling and climate-friendly recommendation that I got today from Amazon. So this is the starting motor. Here are the contacts. This is a negative contact. This is the positive contact. Two clamps on the wire. On a thick wire which goes only to the relay. And then this wire is connected to this motor contact. This is the motor contact. And here are the super condensers. So here's the plus and here's the negative, comes here. And then I will just see what happens. This is now on a 13 volt. And then we will see the current. We can also store this data. I put here a key, a memory key. And there it is. And now you can also on the spreadsheet you can remove this noise. That's very easy. You take just an average on every 10 samples or so, and you take the average of that, and then you will get a very nice line on the computer. You see the current, it's also inverted, and it goes to minus 160, minus 200 amperes. So that's not enough to start the motor. And the current, the voltage is going to 10, you saw it. So the shunt is not good enough. The resistance of 23 milliohm is too big. I will warm up the motor a little bit so that it will be easier to start. What you see is also that after the voltage is going down, it goes higher than the original voltage of 13 volt or so, or maybe 12.5 volt. So the motor worked a little bit, and now I'm going to take away again this contact, the system plus. And I hope now that with the warm motor it will depart, because otherwise I don't know. I made this current shunt and I want to use it. So I fix it in place. Okay, so it will stay here. I put these on it. So this is going, this is the yellow, and that is the current probe. I connect it again. And this one is going to here. The blue channel, the voltage is going to the minus, and then both the grounds are connected to this. Okay, we'll switch it on. Both grounds are connected to this pole here. So now we measure the current here, and I will start it again. This oscilloscope, I mean. So this is now a little bit better voltage. It's now really at 30. It's a little bit higher than before because the battery has been charged. And the current is now at 0. It doesn't go, eh? So what I can do is now I will ask the help of this cable here. I made this black cable also of the same length, so I can suppose that the current will be divided between the red and the black one. So that means that the shunt resistance will be half of it. That means that each division here would mean not 84 but nearly 170 ampere. So we try that and we will see if the motor will start now. I am happy that I found this solution because otherwise I would be disappointed to disappoint you. So that's now the new configuration. You see here, this is the plus of the battery and that's the plus of the system. And now we have two cables instead of one, so half the resistance. So that means instead of 23 milliohms we have 11 milliohms. Now that's not much more than a battery. We'll do it again. You see them. So if one division is 170 ampere, well, we got this 170 ampere. But okay, this cable here, it was sold with 4 times as much cable than I have here, and it was sold really as a starting cable. So what the heck are they selling to me? I know this is a diesel, but I took away 3/4 of this cable length and I put also 2 in parallel. So what is going on here? If you see here that it's 170 ampere, that's clear that it's not enough to start this engine. And you see here the current. So it starts here and then it, because it's going in that direction. So this is later and it's a little bit larger, the currents. That's maybe, I don't know, because it finds the compression. I think it finds here the compression so that the current is there. Oh, that's very interesting, because then it's just getting stuck there. So it gives up here. It says, okay, the current is still bigger than here. So I do this still, but here I really stop because the voltage is going too deep here. So, okay, that's interesting. Now we will see what will change when I put the super capacitors. Okay, you saw already that the super capacitors, they don't have a real good cable, but I will try it all the same. It's already charged, and of course these wires, they are thick, but of course not for 400 amperes. But there's also the battery. I just want to know what will happen. We will see that the voltage dip will be less, because here we are at 10 volts. So here you see this dip here of the voltage is from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 12 volts, and this is even going back to 8 volts. And then here the next line where it stays a little bit for how many seconds? So for 1 second more or less. This the width of this spike here, that's more or less 1 second. And then we see that for a little moment it's going to 8 volt, and then it stays for quite a while around 10 volts. So we will just see with this super capacitor what will happen with this spike. So you saw it and I registered it, and we can compare it with the next spike, which will be there with the super capacitors. Now it is at least it is the battery is well charged and the motor is also hot. So now we will do the starting experiment, and here we have the voltage. It's between the 12 and the 14 volt line, and this is 0. And so here we will see how this dip will be. If it will be again with one spike to the 8 volt, and then that it stays a little bit here at 10 volt. So we will start now. You can look to what happens here, because I think you deserve it with so much patience. And then afterwards, when I come out of the car, then I will put the focus on the screen. So there we are. That was the experiment. What I see here, it's not going anymore to the 8 volt line, and also it's not as before going with the spikes around 10 volt line. It's a little bit below. It is here's a 12 volt, here's 10 volt, and that means it's going staying at 11 volts. It's going around 10.5, 11 volts. So I think we have here a gain of 1 volt super capacitor, and even with these kind of connections with the thin iron wire, at least thin for this application. And then also these resistances, which even are not able to give a real starting current. But I think that this fact here, this difference here, it proves that quite some current is still going to these wires given by the supercapacitors. And this fact that I did it with, well, not professional connections, it's also a kind of a protection for supercapacitors of very high currents, just because it's the first experiment. And then afterwards, we can always put it under a heavier trial. But anyway, I think this is a very interesting experiment. Well guys, we go by steps, and I think it is an important steps. And you see now also that the LEDs are brighter. They have been when the car was still running at 14 volts, because we see here on this frozen image that it was at 14 volt here. But we know that the whole capacitor bank can go to 16.2 volts. So that would really be here under the scale at one division further. And we didn't arrive at maximum voltage of the supercapacitors. Of course, you can always put 7 supercapacitors, that would still be better. That is something one can choose for. But with this balancing circuit, I have always seen that it is behaving well, and the voltage are always the same. So that means that the voltage of each singular capacitor is just staying right. I hope you liked the new results of the experiments in our journey with the super capacitors. It certainly made sense to add the oscilloscope and to peek into an invisible world of electrons, understanding also what happens in the time dimension. It was really an exciting moment when I discovered the meaning of that piece of graph, where you saw the cranking motor struggling against the resistance of the cylinder against the compression. That was really a deep view inside the engine. If the oscilloscope proves useful in your work, consider adding it to your toolkit. It offers much more than those I used as a student 40 years ago at the Technical University of Eindhoven, and they are surprisingly affordable. Let's continue innovating and making the energy transition happen, one experiment at a time. I wish you good energy.